What's up, people? Welcome to this week's episode of the Indy and Doctor podcast. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. I am doctorless, but the guest will make up for it. Our guest today is Ravishaan Muthiah. He is a strategic communications expert, campaigner, and organizer. He's also won campaigns against corporate giants and broke political mobilization records at Greenpeace. Currently, he's also advocating for migrants at the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. Rav, what are you saying, my bro?
Great to be here, Indy. It's been a while in coming up to it, but I'm glad to be here.
I haven't seen you since like uni Bangladesh days. I'll tell you what, the last time I saw you was when we were at the Kisan protest. Me and my wife Sanj were crossing over the bridge and we saw you. We're like, that's Rav. What are you doing here?
Yeah, man.
But then I noticed over time, this guy's at every mobilization protest possible, man.
You got to keep fighting for people, man. That's what you got to do, man. Whether it's Kisan.
That's literally all you're doing. That is all you're doing non-stop, man. I respect it big time. So, Rav, I'm going to jump into it, yeah? So, first of all, if I check your Insta profiles or I check your sort of outreach on anything, you have every possible media outlet on your actual, let's say, CV. You've got the BBC, you've got the Metro, you've got the Big Issue, you've probably got the Independent from what I can remember. Geez, you're everywhere. So let me ask you, how do you break into these kind of journalistic spaces on your own, of your own accord?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. What I would say is nothing happens on your own, right? So I think like at the end of the process, my name might be on it, someone else's name might be on it, but it's not just me, right? It's a team. It's, people that have come before me, whether it's like family or whether it's friends as well. And then it's the people that I work with and also the people that I work for, most importantly, whether that's sort of migrants, people that are on small boats come to this country, or whether that's like people from our own community, right? Who, we can't forget that we came here at one point, whether it was our grandparents or great-grandparents or even our parents. So yeah, how do you break in? It's a team effort, but I think in terms of like how I've broken into those spaces is sort of understanding the media, really. So understanding, what are the media interested in this moment in time? Are they interested in a Punjabi migrant worker who's been abused by his boss? Are they interested in someone that's come from Afghanistan? Are they interested in Palestine at the moment? So it's understanding sort of the trends. And I'm sure, Indy, I'm not telling you anything new to you because like with viral content or digital content, it's all about knowing what's trending. And to be honest, the old media, traditional media is no different. It's about understanding what's trending, what are they interested in, what's big in the news right now, and then how do you get your narrative into it? How do you insert what you think and what you believe into that big space? So yeah, it's understanding that. Then it's just getting contacts. It's again like networking, understanding who's the person to contact at a certain media outlet, and then contacting that right person, building up a relationship. And then also you always have to prove yourself in this world. It's the sad truth of it. People never open doors for you easily. You have to sort of prove that what you're saying is valuable, that you're speaking for people, and that, people's audiences will care for it. That, whether it's the Independent or Metro, their specific audience will care about what you're talking about. So yeah, I think that's, maybe I've gone on a bit, but that's probably what I'd say the way to break in.
I'd never thought that media was going to be trend heavy. Trend heavy is kind of a wild statement, but it makes sense now that you put it in that way because everything's all based on what's current in the news today. So for those guys, there is a lot of push around migrants or push around climate change, etc. That's right up your alley. So that definitely makes sense. What I'm trying to understand is when you make those inroads, do you just simply find the person to contact them and they'll throw you a bone at like a low stakes kind of conversation, see how you handle it, and then gradually you get pushed into bigger and bigger spaces, I guess you could say?
Yeah, so I think it worked two ways. So on one side, the organization that I work for would have already had contacts at these spaces. So I've been able to lean on those contacts, ensure that we build those relationships again. But on the other side, you're right. I think it's you always have to sort of prove yourself again and reprove yourself. Why am I an important person for someone to listen to? So you're right. Sometimes you do have to start a little lower. Sometimes people will say, okay, well, maybe we can work with you on this small piece. And then once you've written that and maybe it does well on their metrics, maybe they've got enough hits and engagement on it as well, or maybe the editor has said, this is a great article, let's do more of this. Then you get bigger pieces, you get bigger opportunities. You'd be invited to talk at different spaces. People I used to do bong competitions with will say, come onto your podcast, right? So then it's like, it happens bit by bit. So I think, you have to keep plugging away in the world as well. So, and if you believe in something, that's the easiest way to do it. If you believe in something, you'll just keep doing it no matter what. Even if doors close, even if people push back on you, you'll just keep going. So that's what's really driven me on, to be honest, a belief that what I'm doing is for the right causes, is for the right people.
I see that. Did they ever show you the metrics behind it? Like, you got X amount of hits, impressions, clicks. Do you get to see that by request, or do they keep that behind closed doors?
No, to be honest, it's generally behind closed doors, but we can analyze it. So there's digital tools there's stuff like, there's something called Meltwater, which is a media monitoring tool. You can basically see hits on certain articles, see its reach, by using different metrics. You can see whether it's gone global, whether your name or your quotes have been picked up and put onto different articles and sort of moved around.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that happens as well. So there's ways. They won't generally tell you, but you'll get an idea if they ask you back again, or if they say, this is thanks a lot for working with us, then you get to know, okay, this was a good one, basically.
Damn. Okay, all right. That gives me hope that some random guys like me and you can make it into these spaces, man. That's quite nice. I mean, I never thought that it was trend heavy, but now that I know that, and you've obviously got inroads through your organizations to help you open those doors, that is easier to break into. So, all right, sweet. That gives me hope. What's it been like from your family's perspective of seeing you endorse all of these causes you're doing? We're going to touch on them in a bit, but I want to kind of paint the scene a little bit from your background of how you made it into doing kind of activism. Is it fair to say? So doing more of that, because our generation of parents prior to us, or the generation prior to me and you, were always taught to not ruffle feathers. We were just taught to stick to the day-to-day, keep your head down, don't piss anyone off. You are definitely pissing people off with the stuff you do. So how did they handle that kind of massive change in you from what they did in the past?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So for my mom's family are Punjabi Sikh. And when they came to the country as well, like you said, they didn't want to ruffle any feathers, right? They were in West London, Southall. My nana and nanny, they were both factory workers, right? They worked in biscuit factory.
Yeah.
But a few things happened. So my nana was made redundant at one stage in his early career in the UK. And that sort of was a moment which almost like radicalized him, and also my mum and other members of our family, to sort of be like, this isn't right. Like I come to this country, I was a subject of the British Empire. Then they told me that we can come to this country, we can sort of start a new life, we can help rebuild the country. I came here out of goodwill because I wanted to rebuild the country. Obviously, it's an opportunity as well. And then I'm working this job. It's really hard. There's racism that I'm sure, a lot of our grandparents and parents would have faced. I'm dealing with all this stuff, struggling, having to work however many jobs to put food on the table for my family. And now all of a sudden, like, you can just tell me I've got no job. I'm gone. I'm done. Like, there's nothing. And I think that was a moment for him and all of my mom's family, which has sort of made them think something's not right here. And then for my mum, I think she then got involved a little bit in activism and sort of political work. And sort of that trend has sort of followed on to me. On my dad's side, which is very, very different, my dad's dad was actually a political activist. So, so he was a political activist in Sri Lanka. So my dad's family from Sri Lanka, and he was a Tamil man. And in Sri Lanka, there's a civil war between the Sinhalese and the Tamil, a very brutal and bloody civil war. And he was an activist in Sri Lanka. And then he married my grandmother, who was a Sinhalese woman. So it was almost like a marriage across the divide, right? It's a marriage across two warring parties, like Romeo and Juliet, if you want. So, they married, and that created a lot of issues in the family, many more issues than were caused by my parents' marriage later on. That created much more issues. So through that sort of trend of activism has always sort of been in my blood, I guess, and always been in my family. But you're right, it is still something that my parents worry about in terms of, there's the rise of sort of racism and far right language. Sunak Braverman, the Home Secretary, comes out with has been coming out with a lot of horrible stuff. The new Home Secretary, James Cleverly, again is going to come out with horrible stuff. Even though we've got Rishi Sunak, who's a Indian heritage, it doesn't change anything. They're still coming out with racist narratives. So yeah, my family are worried definitely about ruffling feathers, about far right attacks and stuff like that. But I'm a little bit fortunate in that it wasn't a big jump for them because of what happened when my nana came to the UK, because of my dad's family. They kind of understood activism and fight. You need to fight. You need to believe in what you fight for. And not to go on too much, but one other point is, I think if you look through Punjabi Sikh history, whether you go to sort of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire, whether you go after that, Guru Gobind Singh Ji and the Khalsa, there's a fighting spirit throughout all of our history, right? So I think even if we've been told not to ruffle feathers, all of us have a little bit of that inside of us. So it's about when you choose to use it. Do you choose to use it to have online beef, or do you choose just to use it to sort of, fight the government? So that's sort of, I think we've all got a bit of it in us.
I think we definitely do all have it in us. I think I've noticed over time that when Sikhs rally together and they try and get something done, it gets done. And they can be quite a uniting force considering there's not that many of us. I mean, if you look at the numbers over the years, even during the time of the war, Sikhs made up, what was it? I think it was 20% of the military operation in India, even though we were less than 1% of the population there. So there is that massive, passion within us to try and support a cause and keep it pushing forward. Look at the Kisan protests, etc., even the way how we shut down central London. So we have it in us. It's just, do we need to use it? And then it's obviously picking and choosing your battles, as you've said. So that is important to highlight. And I think you made a great point there. Tell me a bit more about your nana, though, with how he became a bit more radicalized, as you said. What did he do after he was made redundant?
So for him, I mean, there were sort of union movements at the time. There's something called the Greenwich Strike, which was a union movement of South Asian women in a factory, and they sort of fought back. They unionized, they fought back, and they sort of won their battle. For my nana, there wasn't as much of a union, organized union movement, so he couldn't join that exactly. And he did find it hard because he had to sort of push back on his own almost. He was a little bit isolated and wasn't able to find a group. It's always easier, if you're on your own fighting, you could fight and you can keep going. But if you've got a group behind you and if you've got people that are backing you behind you, it's easier, right? So he was a little bit isolated, so he had to fight on. And then for him, he had to get another job. He had to find a new job and find something else. I think for that generation, like you're saying, they had to keep their heads down a little bit because they needed money on the table. They were brand new to the country. They didn't have a house. They weren't privileged like us to have a family that built a home, built maybe businesses, built a new life, right? They were building that new life. So for him, he had to try and fight the battle. Once he wasn't able to fight it, he had to think, okay, what do I do next? I've got to get a job. Otherwise, my kids are going to starve. My wife's going to starve. So he did that.
Yeah.
My mum basically took on his battle for him, and she started organizing. She got involved in unions. Again, she wasn't able to win that battle, but she started to try and push back against this sort of stuff and stop it from happening again to other people. Because I think when these things happen to us on an individual basis, they can change our minds. But for me, it's about not just when you're affected, it's about when other people are affected. Because at the end of the day, someone might be affected today and you don't know, it might be you tomorrow or the next day. So I think it's important to ensure that we are continuing to look out for each other, have that solidarity. I think solidarity is a bit of a catchword nowadays and people throw it around a lot. But it's important to, basically all it means is just caring for each other and looking out for each other. And again, that's part of our community as well, right? In terms of Seva and stuff like that, it's a big part of us.
Since you've touched on that, then tell me about how you managed to draw comparisons with Top Boy and the community and the whole outrage there amongst the migration or forced migration of one of the characters in the show. How do you make that sort of topic come together and then get it published in the Metro?
Yeah,
there's so many steps that go into that. So obviously getting that accomplished, how'd you do it?
I mean, for me, so again, I guess it talks about me a little bit and who I am, right? So for me, I think I grew up in North London. So North London, I grew up in North London. I went to a state school, quite a rough school, to be honest, probably one of the worst schools in the country. there was a lot
Yeah.
of crime at my school. There was a lot of knife crime, a lot of people getting into things they didn't want to get into. But once you're in it, it's too late, right? Once you get into a life of crime, once you've, picked up a knife and got caught by the police, your cards are marked, so to speak. So through understanding that, I sort of understand that there's a lot of nuance in that. I think, again, in our community, some people think, oh, these people are just bad people. They just want to do this stuff and they're bad. But actually, no, people have a story, right? Everyone has a story. Everyone gets to a point in their life because of where they came from. So from watching Top Boy, I'm into Top Boy. I watch Top Boy. I just noticed that this is something that's happening. They picked up on something that's happening all the time. People are getting deported. You can live here. You could have lived here for however long, because your papers were not done. So we saw in the Windrush scandal, because your papers haven't been processed, or you haven't got the right papers, you haven't got a passport, sooner or later the police pick up on it, or the hospitals pick up on it, and they say, wait a minute, are you sure you're supposed to be here? Like, are you sure you're a British citizen? And that leads to one thing, leads to another. Next minute the police are at your door and they're knocking down your door and trying to take you away. So I saw that scene. And then also a lot of the people that we work with at JCWI, the organisation I work for, have gone through this sort of stuff. So I saw this link and I thought, this is a brilliant link and a brilliant moment for us to spotlight Top Boy, which is a massive, trending, popular TV show, and link it to something that's happening to our clients and people that we work with all the time. So it was basically, a mixture of like my own interests linking up very nicely. And I think that's something we can all do, right? There's so many things we're interested in, but there's a lot of intersections. So like, not to go into something different, but even as an Arsenal fan, right? There's so many ways in which I can link being an Arsenal fan or a football fan to racism or to abuse or to whatever else happens. And I think through linking these different elements, you can make a story. So that's what happened really. I saw it. I thought this is a great story. Let's link it up. Got in touch with the Metro again in terms of with sort of content they put out kind of pop culture content. So it fit very well. It fit. He was like, this would trend, this would work for them. They took it and, we managed to get the story out.
That's interesting, man. I'm glad I'm glad you made the correlation and made it somewhat appealing to others to highlight the Windrush scandal. I do think Top Boy did that on purpose, because I'm sure a lot of their cast were impacted by the Windrush scandal and they thought this is a good way to make that stand against it. And I can see things like that potentially hashing out in a community area. Maybe not the dramatization where they got the guy out the car. That probably wouldn't happen. But it was just a nice little symbol against the oppression that they've been under. And I'm thinking it's a good way to highlight it and sort of give a little bit of satisfaction, I guess you can say. Since we're on the migrant topic, then let's dig a little bit deeper. So tell me a little bit about the work you're doing for migrants. And you've also made a correlation towards climate justice and migrant justice together. Could you tell me how those are interlinked?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the work we do, so I work for an organisation called the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. We've been around for sort of over 50 years now. And the organisation was actually founded in Southall from different communities came together and they said, we need to come together and fight for our rights, basically. And from then it's gone from strength to strength. We've got sort of a team of lawyers who do legal work. We've got an advocacy team who sort of work with Parliament, MPs, and try and sort of change policies and laws. And then we've got my team, which is all about communications. How do we communicate our message? How do we ensure that the public know the truth, right? Because, we get told a lot of stuff in terms of, migrants are taking our jobs or migrants are coming here to steal from us. I mean, that's not the truth. The truth is that, people that come here are generally vulnerable people that have come here, or they've been allowed to come here via a different visa scheme, whether that's coming as students, whether that's coming as farm workers or to be part of our NHS. So that's the truth. And that's what we do as an organization. In terms of the organization, I work with a lot of our clients who have sort of been through different forms of migration to come to this country, whether they've, come on boats, whether they've come through, a lot of people still come via airplanes and then put in a claim. So, there's different ways that people come here, and my job is to work with them, understand their story, and sort of try and ensure that people hear their story, because we know that across the country, people are actually really pro-migration. Although you hear into media all this stuff like anti-migration stuff, people like you and I, like ordinary people, are actually pro-migration more than ever before. And then, in terms of climate justice, it's scary when you think about it too much, right? I worked at Greenpeace for a while, and when I was there, we dealt with different forms of climate breakdown. So whether it's in your oceans, the forests in the Amazon, there's different ways that, sadly, because of sort of the burning of fossil fuels and what we've done to the climate, the world is changing around us, and not for the better. It's scary. It's scary. It's getting hotter, as we know. There was a storm just recently in Manchester. I saw a picture today of a roof of a house ripped off, and it's terrifying, that this sort of stuff is happening. Yeah. Extreme weather events are happening more and more. But one of the things that's going to happen is that, eventually, for example, we saw in South Asia recently, there were massive floods in Pakistan. There was also some flooding that hit Punjab side of India as well, the India side of Punjab. So there was massive floods. We know a lot about harvesting and crops and irrigation and ways in which sort of food cycles are breaking down. So what happens is, when people don't have food, when they can't rely on the land as they used to be able to rely on it, they have to move. We need to do two things. We need to ensure that people don't have to move. So we need to make sure that they can continue to live where they want to. We shouldn't be forcing people to leave where they wanted to live, right? So, I have a friend that lived in the Maldives. He should be allowed to live in the Maldives forever. But the sad truth is that the rising sea levels means that eventually the Maldives is going to be underwater, right? So we need to do two things. We need to ensure that people can stay where they want to live, whether that's in the Maldives or in Punjab or wherever they want to live. And at the same time, if they can't stay there, we need to be able to ensure they can move. We need to be able to ensure and say to them, listen, we know that, in your local area, there's a lot of flooding, there's extreme weather, there's no food anymore, there's no crops. So in that case, you should be able to move to here, whether that's that should be, in my opinion, in our world, in the global north, in the Western world, because in our side of things, we've created this issue, not me and you individually, but the countries we now live in through the Industrial Revolution created a massive amount of pollution, which has now led to the climate breakdown we're seeing. Not only that, if you look at the British Empire and all of the pollution that was created through that, massive amounts of pollution, massive amounts of deforestation in parts of India. There used to be tigers and lions roaming around forests in India. I mean, the lion is nearly extinct in India now. It only has a small amount of land that it can live in. So, these are all things that have been caused by the global north, by countries like the UK, by the US as well in recent years. So, we should be saying to the people that are being affected by the issues that our countries have caused, you should be able to come. We welcome you to this part of the world. And, we're not going to close our borders. We're not going to say you can't come here. So that's.
So what's ironic about that is, if we just take a step back and just zoom out a little bit, right? So the UK is very anti-migrant, but they're a big contributor towards the mass emissions in the world, which then leads to a problem in the home country of a person who therefore has mass flooding, etc., has to leave and essentially applies for asylum. Is that correct?
If they came to the country,
they're applying for asylum over here. Okay, so they're applying for asylum over here because they might have a family member here or whatever. And they come here, then they're told they can't come here, but they know that this country has contributed towards those problems that have happened there. Now, there's a little bit of a twist with this, which is, if you look at the India angle, India's pumping out way more emissions than, say, the UK, because they're going through their industrial revolution, I guess you can say, and they're ramping things up. So as a British person, I could look at that and say, well, it's India's fault then. Why don't you just get them sorted out? You see how it's a little bit intertwined and complicated. We can look back over a 30-year window and say, all right, 30 years ago, it was definitely the UK. So if you look at lines that are trending over time, India's now overtaken, but it doesn't stop what the UK did in the past to get to that problem. So how do you differentiate the lines of responsibilities of where they start and finish? I think that's where things become a little bit blurred and complicated.
Definitely. So I think, there's a way of looking at it. So what you said is definitely right. If you look at it now, India, China, mass emissions, like you said, they're going through that period of rapid industrialization. They're sort of ramping up their economy. They're producing as much as they can. They're shipping it all over the world. They're really boosting their domestic and national economy, right? But, if you look at like global history and the history of the world, right, the British Empire was, lasted for 200 years and it took over, how many countries in the world, most of the world. The sun never set on the British Empire is what they used to say, right? Because it was so expansive. So it's like, 30 years versus 200 years is one way of looking at it, right? So you can say, these countries were mass polluting for 200 years. They created massive environmental destruction, not just through pollution, but through the way that they treated the countries that they came to. And then you can say this countries, India and China, Brazil, then they're massively industrializing now. They're creating a lot of pollution and emissions now. So you have to have a two-pronged way of dealing with this. You have to say, firstly, India, China, Brazil, you have every right to ramp up your economy, right? It's a free market. This is how the world works. However, in the space that we're at, we can't afford this amount of emissions. We can't afford this. So we need you to green your economy. We need you to do this in a way that is much more environmentally friendly. And then you can say for China, for example, in Beijing, if you look maybe 5 years ago, there's pictures of this massive smog around Beijing. And then if you look now, they've done this thing where, certain number plates can drive on a certain day and they can't drive on another day, right? So you balance which cars are able to drive on which day. For people that are in China and Beijing, they might be thinking at this point, that's a bit restrictive. I want to be able to drive my car every day, right? But what that's actually done is it's led to a lot of that smog and a lot of that pollution decreasing. So if you look at a picture of Beijing now, it's much clearer, the air. Even similarly, there's schemes in spaces like Delhi other areas of India where there's a lot of heavy pollution, especially in the summer because of the heat. It creates a massive smog. Again, they're finding ways to reduce this. So you have to do it two ways. You have to look at where did the problem start, who is massively implicated because of the amount of time they spent polluting the world, which would look at the Western countries, the global North, the UK, and the US as well. And then how do we collectively, as a global community, green our economies? Because you're right, we can't just say, UK, you create all these emissions, you got to stop doing stuff, and India, China, you carry on. That's not going to help us. If we do that, we're just marching towards climate breakdown. So we do have to say, India, China, you need to find ways to green your economy. You need to find ways to transition into a much greener, climate-friendly economy. At the same time, when people are forced to move, those places where the climate is better, because the thing is, the UK, if you look at areas of Scotland, in 30, 40 years, just because it's so cold there now, as the temperatures rise, it will be hotter, but it will still be livable. Whereas if you look at the equator or places, more towards the south of the globe, it's going to be a lot hotter. So people won't be able to live there anyway. So it's like they've got a double whammy. We're basically saying to them, you can't do your industrialization like we did, and also your country's going to be unlivable because it's going to be 60 degrees in Iran or 45 degrees in Punjab in summer. So how are you going to survive? Like, humans are not supposed to live at those temperatures. So we have to do a bit of both, right? We have to do a bit of both to balance it.
Okay, so then going to the activism stage of that, people who go to protests such as Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion, do you think they get a bad name because of how they handle and protest? And with that, obviously, I'm not trying to get all Nick Ferrari on you, but they do affect a lot of day-to-day activity. So obviously the cases of ambulances not being able to get through, people dragging them off the street, it makes for great media coverage, but the message behind it is still valid. Do you reckon that they are now seen as like anti-hating British people kind of what do I say? Kind of activism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion are so interesting because I think, we can't deny they've done a brilliant job in getting their names out. Me, you, other people, the whole country, if you say Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil, they know who they are. But you're right. Do they know who they are because they're negative? well, they're not having a negative effect on people's life, or is it positive? That's an interesting question. Now I'll come to that. But firstly, there's a whole saying that it's like, no publicity is bad publicity, right? And if you
It's true. Negativity sells.
exactly,
it's
yeah.
True.
And if they had a mission to get the phrase "just stop oil" into the public consciousness, they've achieved that firstly, because that phrase is very clear. It's just stop oil. So it's like, we need to stop oil, because otherwise, we can go on to say, why stop oil? What does that mean? But, it's quite clear. And so they've achieved that firstly. Secondly, do they piss people off, basically, is a question, right? And, do they, through the activism, end up stopping roads, stopping people from going on the school run and annoy people? I think it's probably, without doubt, that they have done that. And I think it's probably without doubt that, that's probably one of the things that they've said is going to be, they'll have to take that. They have to take the L there, basically. We want to get our message out there, but some people are going to get annoyed and pissed off on us. We'll take it. So they probably weighed it up. In my opinion, I think you can't go anywhere without taking the public with you, right? You need to take the public with you. You need people to be on side. You need people to agree with you. There's ways of doing that. But also, the gravity of the issue of climate change is so great that in their minds, they're thinking and they're saying, we can't afford to take everyone with us. We need to take as many people as we can. And if people get annoyed with us, that's just going to have to be what happens. And I think it's, it's a very risky tactic, of course, because, now when they're on the roads and stopping people, they're getting dragged off, right? They're getting beaten up by people. It's creating civil disobedience.
Yeah.
No one wants to do that. But I have to say, like, I think, for anyone of us, like, that is involved in wanting to change the world, you have to put some respect on that. These people are saying, you know what? I know if I stop in front of these cars, a Range Rover or whatever, on the way to school, I could get run over. I might get dragged off. People, like, there's going to be a load of people that are going to be so annoyed at me, but they believe in it so much that they're willing to risk it. Now, thankfully, like, we live in a democracy, and so far the police don't pull out their guns on people like that, on protesters. Protest laws have changed and they've got more dangerous for protesters. But, at the moment, you've still got the right to protest and not, be, taken to prison and, badly beaten up by the police, right? That does happen, but not all the time. But if you look at it, where these tactics may have started is, again, not to go back, but this might be interesting for people, is if you go back and look at, India under empire, there was a period where, there was a lot of resistance. So, we'll know people like Bhagat Singh, people will know of Mahatma Gandhi, these sort of figures are known, they're controversial in different ways. But, one of the ways in which they did things was non-violent, direct action, basically. And that's the same sort of tactic that Just Stop Oil are doing, right? They're not violent. They're not sort of, tearing stuff down. They're doing some sort of graffiti work, or they're doing some of that, but they're not really vandalizing stuff. All they're doing is they're stopping people from getting on. Is their target the right people? Is the British people or the mum going to school on the school run the right person to target? Maybe not, because the people that are causing the most problems are like the big oil companies and the big corporations, right? But to spread your message and to get onto the news, maybe that's what you need to do at first. And then there's something where people need to say, I think, there's something where they need to have a communication connection, and say, look, we don't want to mess with your lives. We don't want to upset your daily routine. We don't want to stop you from going to school on the school run, but we believe in this, and we want to save the world. We want to save the planet. That's why we're doing this. And I think that connection is maybe missing a little bit. And that's maybe why, people get more annoyed. But, have they got their name out there? Yes, we can't deny it. Is there something that they could do a little bit better? Probably yes.
That connection is important, though, to sort of distinguish themselves from just coming across as arrogant pricks, because that is essentially how people are going to interpret them, especially if you read mainstream media a lot of the time. They're going to depict them as being these, essentially, they hate your life. They want to interrupt everything that you're doing. When they're not, they have a bigger cause at play. The problems that I have with it are, say, I remember a few years ago, they were first starting out with real activism and interruption tactics. And they were on the top of tube trains in Canning Town first thing in the morning. And I thought, number one, this is the dumbest thing you can do, because people in Canning Town are working
Yeah.
class. They got to get to their
Yeah.
jobs. If they're not getting to their jobs on time, they're going to miss a shift, not get paid, lose their jobs. So those people were notably fuming. And if you want to kind of have change, you want to get people who are lower to middle class on your side, because they're the majority of the population, not the upper class. So you have to be very sly and smart with your tactics. And I think they are kind of trying to do it by being indiscriminate now. However, if people just read the standard press, you're always going to have that message pushed on you, which is they're not good for you. They're not good for you. A bit like the migrant style thing now. They're not good for you. They're not good for you. Those who don't understand what they're doing and how it is put out there, they're not going to be able to tell, hang on, I'm being manipulated, or actually this is correct and valid.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it is important, who you target and the people who are going to be affected and whose lives are going to be affected is very important. And I think, yeah, I remember that. I remember that as well. And I remember seeing it and I thought, oh man, this is probably not the right people to target. You don't want to be stopping working class people from getting to work in the morning. You don't want to do that. And I mean, I think you're right. They've started to change the tactics a little bit. I think they've started to, do stuff at bigger venues. So there was a guy that stopped the Everton match. He tied himself to the Everton goalpost, and then there was some people that sort of disrupted the Royal Albert Hall. I think it was
and a cricket game as well, where they ran on and spread the orange powder.
Exactly, yeah, the proms. So they're starting to do these sort of different events where it's like more of a spectator sport event. The TV and media coverage is there. Of course, it stops the game, but people are generally there for a good time. And I've been to football games where they've been interrupted by streakers and stuff like that. It happens. You move on. You watch the game. Your team wins or loses. That's what matters most, really. So I think they're starting to maybe change the tactics. I think that message has probably got through to them a little bit about not affecting working class people. I can't speak for them fully because it's not an organization I'm fully involved in at all.
No,
but I think they are changing their tactics. I think in terms of, name recognition, they've achieved that. In terms of, making their causes known, they've achieved that. Now it's, like you said, that final piece of the puzzle of making that connection of, we're not against you. We're not trying to disrupt your life. We're not trying to irritate you. We're trying to fight for you, right? We're trying to ensure that the world is livable 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, so we can all live on the planet. And maybe that's the next phase that they're in. And maybe that's the cycle they went through, right? Maybe they thought first we get our name recognition, then we start to build that rapport with the public. But again, I can't speak for them, but that could be a sort of cycle they might have thought about.
I'm interested to kind of see their next phase and how they go about things, because they've got the recognition. Now let's see what they do afterwards. Just going to skip ahead a little bit. So you went to COP26. Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, COP26 was 2 years ago now. It was good.
So when you went, how did you, first of all, get that opportunity? Secondly, did you get much face time with any of the leaders? I know you met Jagmeet Singh. I know you met Ed Miliband, etc.
Yeah. So when I went to COP with Greenpeace, so I went to COP with Greenpeace UK when I was working for them. And I was there, at that time I was there on the ground as sort of a digital campaigner. And my job was basically to go around and speak to people, get a story from them, understand why they were there, what they were doing. So I was really fortunate because of my role. I meant I had a bit of a free role to sort of roam around and see who I could find, right? I was really fortunate. I managed to meet Jagmeet, and he was someone that I was quite proud of, right? I don't know if all of us have this, but when I see someone from my community doing well, especially in politics or the same sort of space that I'm involved in, I was very proud of he was the leader of the NDP. I think he just lost an election. But not only that, I think a lot of the things that he said and stood for really resonated with me. I think he was, someone that spoke for the people, spoke for equality. So it was pure chance, actually. I was walking over a bridge and I saw this Singh coming towards me, and I think he was wearing a pink bug, and I was like, that's very recognizable. Who is that? There's not many Singhs at COP26, right? There's an issue maybe with representation there as well. And I saw him, I was like, oh my God, that's Jagmeet. So, for me, I don't mind going up to someone, the worst that can happen is they could say I'm very busy or I don't want to talk. So I went up to him, had a quick chat with him. Yeah, very humble guy, very down to earth. I didn't get to do an interview with him, but he was there working as well. So very, very nice guy. Ed Miliband as well, someone that I've met a few times when I worked for the Labour Party. So someone that I knew a little bit, but also someone that's been really outspoken and good on climate issues and environmental issues. I think he said some really strong stuff. So I got to interview him and ask him, what he thought about COP26, what the big things were for him from that conference. And then I also met people like Greta Thunberg. I was marching with Greta on the sort of the youth strike day. Again, someone that gets demonized a lot by the media, right? Someone who from a very young age sort of fought for climate, the climate movement, and spoke out and became a big figure because of that, right? But I think gets a lot of unfair treatment from the media, maybe because she's got such a big voice or she's got such a big platform and microphone that people are like, yeah, we need to sort of shut her down. But she was, very humble person as well. Just one thing I learned from like a lot of the people that I've met and been fortunate to meet is everyone's the same, right? We're all just people. Obviously some people can act like they're something different. But at the end of the day, if you're a good person, you just know you're like everyone else and you're just very, very ordinary and normal, and they'll approach you in the same way they'll approach anyone else. So yeah, I mean, it was a great experience to go to COP, to meet people, to see what it was all about. My main takeaway from COP and from all COPs really is that I don't know how effective they are, and I don't know how effective they will ever be in getting the change that we want to get. I thought it...
Tell me more why.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like, COP to me was like a big sort of, what do they call them? Like, it was a big convention center, right? And there were lots of different people there. A lot of them were, well-meaning. A lot of them sometimes from, oil companies who were there to sort of, do their insider talks and try and move the negotiations in a certain way. And then you got the states, the countries, right? So one really interesting thing happened is I was sitting at the canteen just having a sandwich, and I ended up sitting next to the Indian delegation. They all had India on them. And I was like, wow. And they were all sitting around me, right? They were all sitting around me. And I thought, this is really interesting. And then they started saying, they were speaking a few languages, there's so many languages in India, but one of the languages, I think they were speaking a bit Hindi, a bit Punjabi. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I can kind of listen to what they're saying. And then they then were a bit suspicious of me and were like, who is this guy? And I had Greenpeace on my thing, right? And they saw that I was Greenpeace, and then they were really like, oh, this is a bit dodgy. Like, why is this guy here? How do we sit next to him?
But you don't look that desi, in fairness. So they probably thought maybe we're all right. And they're thinking they're speaking in tongue that you're not going to get.
It might have been that. They thought they were incognito, right? And then they saw the Greenpeace. Then they started asking me a few questions. And I was like, oh, they were quite worried because basically a little bit of context, but Greenpeace India has been banned. It's been shut down by the government, right? So the Indian government have a lot of beef with Greenpeace in India. And these people were obviously delegates of the Indian government. So they've seen Greenpeace, they're getting a bit twitchy. And I just had a little bit of jokes, chit chat. Like I had a bit of fun, to be honest. I was like, so tell me what's your strategy and all this sort of stuff. And then that freaked them out a little bit more. And then, I finished my meal and then I went off and did my own thing. But that was interesting. But yeah, basically why I mentioned that is every country is there to do their own thing, right? Every country is there. So the big, India, Russia, China, they want to do certain things. The UAE recently, it was the last COP28 was held in Dubai, right? I mean, like one of the, it's an economy that's based on oil, right? The UAE is all based on oil and the energy sector. So they were there, they're all there with their own, initiative, and they want to sort of ensure that oil continues and fossil fuels continue. Whereas what I believed COP was before I went was something where, all the countries come together and try to save the environment and save the planet. It wasn't that. It was something where all the countries come together and try and say, we want oil, we want coal, we don't want coal, we're sinking, we're drowning. Like, everyone's got their own angle. So yeah, whether it's something that will actually lead to actual change, I don't know. From what I've seen in the last 2 or 3 COPs, I don't think so. So I think, we're going to have to do that from the ground up. We're going to have to do that from activism, from, individuals pushing on their governments, which is why I've got no respect for people like Greta as well, because that's what they do.
I think with Greta though, I feel like the pushback she gets is because she's so young. People think, "What the fuck do you really know? Like you're X years old," and that has validity because sometimes a lot of people are thinking, "Well, you don't really know enough. You've just got here. Maybe you should pass the reins, or there should be somebody else in your position that knows a lot more about history, politics, nuance that should be in that seat." So that adds to it, and also she is a woman, which means you're obviously going to get a lot more flack compared to what you would as a guy from media outlets. That's simply how it goes. Unfortunately, I don't agree with it. I'm just trying to explain the lay of the land to listeners out there who are thinking, why her? So yeah, I feel like in a few years time that will brush off and she'll just be an established woman, and then people will just sit there and be like, all right, she is who she is. That's a different message and a different person now.
But that thing about age, that's a big thing in our community, right? Like, you're too young, listen to your elders, speak when you're spoken to. I don't know, man. Like, I just think the age thing is always a thing where it's like, actually, sometimes kids are very wise and very smart. Like, I don't know, like my niece and nephew, sometimes they come out with stuff and I'm like, yeah, that's really smart. That's a way of seeing the world that I haven't seen yet. And I've not thought of it. So like, I think even that's a bit unfair. I get what you're saying in terms of why it probably happens, but I even think that's unfair. The age thing, like, sometimes young people have a lot more to say and a lot better things to say than older people. Because sometimes older people use their wisdom to, manipulate or create a whole new situation or change the narrative. Whereas young people, I think, generally, the younger you are, the purer you are, right? Because the less you've seen, the more sort of naive you are. And through that naivety and that ignorance, as ignorance is bliss, you sort of say things and see things in a much freer way. And you also have sometimes a bit more confidence, right, to say things because you don't know the repercussions. You don't have all that sort of, self-fear and worries. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do think age is a big thing in the Desi industry and just Desi space. I know that there is a lot of hate towards younger content creators now that are coming out, just speaking from our industry. There are some people who are seen as, you're too young to get into this. You need to relax, chill, focus on your studies, etc. Don't really mess around with stuff that you don't understand. Don't ruffle the wrong feathers, like how we said earlier. And you notice the older you get, people are old, but they're also kind of thick. I mean, respectfully, they are thick. I'm like, okay, you might be 45, but I look at you and I think you're not doing much with your life and you don't really know much about anything. So if I ask your views on anything, I know that you're just going to give me some thrown together opinion that you're going to just live and die by quickly. And it's eye-opening because the older you get, you think, hang on, you're supposed to be the wise one, but then you notice how flawed people are with finances, with how they run their household, with how they live their life, with their health, like etc. So yeah, everyone's deeply flawed, but this whole age is a predicating factor, I think the word is, or an indicating factor to maturity or wiseness doesn't always add up. It might be a subtle indicator, but there's always going to be mass exceptions.
Definitely. I don't think age always translates. I mean, there's definitely some really wise people, and like even in my own life, I've always had respect for my elders and learned stuff, but you're right. Like, yeah, I mean, there's stupid old people, there's stupid young people. There's, age doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have learned from what you should have learned from, right? You could go through, anyone can go through a bunch of things in life and decide to not to learn anything or may not learn anything. So I think, young people get a lot of flack, but I'm all for young people speaking up when they want to and can. And also, I'm not going to say I'm not for older people speaking up as well. I'm all for them as well. But the rule that age equals wisdom, I think is false, definitely.
Well, speaking of stupid older people, let's talk about the government at the moment. So with the government itself in this past year, 2023, this probably isn't going to come out until the new year. But looking back on 2023 and the sort of language and message surrounding migrants, how do you think that's kind of evolved into a more toxic environment? Where do you think it started to how it got to where we are now?
Well, I think it's disgusting, man. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. The language that the government have come out with towards very vulnerable people that mean no ill to any of us, right? And all for what? Like, all for what? Like, what are they doing that for? For power or for votes or to win the next election? And it's just like, it's quite sickening to me to think that, the people that have been doing it, there's a thing like, what is it? Race folk, or, people from your own space doesn't mean that they're going to be like, good people, right? Just because they're migrants from India or whatever doesn't mean that they're going to be good, right? In terms of, Sunak and Rishi Sunak, just to be clear. But I mean, I think it's absolutely sickening that the people that are, second or third generation migrants themselves are coming out with some of the worst language to migrants ever, potentially some of the worst language ever towards migrants. It just makes me so sick. And why is it, like we said, it's for power, it's for the next election. There's nothing else. There's no other reason to do it, because with the people that I work with and the people that many people work with that come to this country, they have the same thing in their minds and in their hearts as our grandparents or people from our community would have had when they came here or still come here, which is, I want to create a life for my family. I want to create a life for my family back home, or send money back, or whatever it is. They don't want to come here, and no one's looking for a free pass or anything like that, generally, right? And those people that come here who have fled war and torture, they've got even more vulnerabilities, right? Because they're fleeing like incredibly, horrible things that a lot of people couldn't imagine, right? Even if, like, through my history and our collective history, 1984 happened, the partition of India happened, where there was a lot of blood loss. We didn't live that, right? We weren't there. We have the stories from our parents and grandparents, and we can understand, and it can affect us. We have that trauma passed down onto us, right? Mm. These people are going through those things right now, today. They're living through those things today, coming to this country, and then the country are just saying to them, you know what? You can't come here. You're a scrounger. You're an invasion on our shores. You're here to create, divisions and stuff like that. It's like, it's sickening. So yeah, we've really got to a bad place in the last year or so. I think, is it the worst ever? Potentially, yes. Because if you look at it, when you go back over history, Churchill's really talked up as like a great man in certain circles in this country, but he said a lot.
The man was a racist. Let's get it out there, right? The man was a huge racist.
Massive.
But that gets fully glossed over. Also, he massively fucked up the country after the war. Yep. He had this charisma about him, but he didn't understand how to run the country and get the wheels kind of moving again. So yeah, he's championed for all those things and he's on flipping money, but he wasn't that great a leader as what people think. Similar to Gandhi. Gandhi's had some pretty disgusting allegations put against him that haven't been refuted. So everyone's very deeply flawed when it comes to those things. But it's funny how everybody kind of leaves those points to the side and just want to put things towards their narrative of how things look from their perspective.
Exactly. So yeah, Churchill, massive racist. I'm glad we got that out there and it's all out in the open. Churchill, massive racist. Enoch Powell, massive racist. There's Rivers of Blood speech. But then you have to say Rishi Sunak, Suella Braverman, massive racist. They are on the same level as these people. The things that they are saying and the things that they are willing to say in order to try and cling on to power is absolutely sickening. So, for me, I'm dreaming of a day when they are no longer in power, to be honest. That's my dream. I know Suella had a dream, but that's my dream. So yeah.
And you're wearing that, you're saying that as you're wearing a Black Panther top.
Exactly, yeah. Right. There's subliminal messages all around us, yeah.
Very subliminal messages, mate. I'm sure if you look in your bookshelf, I'll find some more. All right, let's sit and unpack a few things you've said there. So what do you think of with the Tory party being so polarized towards migrants? Do you reckon because they have a minority face on the front of it, it allows them to feel more emboldened to get this message across? Because they're like, well, one of their own is kind of saying this, so anything's possible now and it can be championed and pushed forward?
I think so, definitely. I think it's classic, isn't it? It's classic British establishment, right? It's the same sort of divide and rule. You get someone, I'm not saying these people are puppets, and I'm not saying they don't even believe it. They may believe it, but it's very, very, fortunate for that Conservative Party to have someone who has a brown face come up and say, we're going to attack migrants or attack migrants in the way that they have been doing. Incredibly fortunate for that too.
Do you think it's fortunate or do you think it's intentional?
I think the thing is, the reason I don't want to say it's intentional, because I mean, it is maybe intentional, but I don't want to give Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman a free pass, right? I don't want to just say that they're being used as pawns in this big thing. I think they have beliefs, and they believe what they're saying, right? I think if they didn't believe that migrants should be coming here, that they need to stop the boats and all of this stuff, they wouldn't be there saying it. I don't think anyone's putting a gun to their head, forcing them to say it, right? However, yeah, is it intentional? Maybe, yeah, maybe is intentional. Maybe there is an intention within that wing of the Conservative Party to say, let's have these people speak our message for us because they're much better placed. They can say things that we can't say, or, there's all this wokeness. They can get away with it, basically.
There is that, and there's also another layer, which is you don't flip from being a very white cabinet to flip into a full, most ethnically diverse cabinet overnight. That is done by design. I don't care what you say. That is very intentional, because you look at the Labour Party, there ain't many minority faces there. There's a few, like David Lammy, etc., but the ones that have been there for a while don't have a good rep. Look at Diane Abbott, for example. I don't even think she is a Labour MP anymore. I think she's an independent. But even then, she was associated with the party as the minority face, and people laughed at her for years. So there is power that can be held in having that sort of cabinet built behind you, because you can say, well, they haven't done it. And then Boris Johnson can stand up and say, most ethnically diverse cabinet ever. See, and that sticks, unfortunately, because it's tokenism that is very, very sexy.
Yeah.
And they've got me now agreeing with someone who I didn't used to like, which is Sayeeda Varsi. I didn't like her policies in the past of what she did, but all of a sudden they've got me agreeing with her on Friday nights on the last leg where she's calling them fascists. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what's the world become where, like, all of a sudden I agree with what she's saying, but I didn't like her in the past, and now the needle's been pushed so far, this is now okay.
I think you're right that the Conservative Party are definitely doing that establishment British thing of sort of divide and rule, right? So you get brown people or brown faces to sort of head up your government, to lead you, and then they get to say the most divisive things, the most horrible things. Through that, you get people turning against each other. You're also able to say things that maybe a white person wouldn't be able to say in the current climate, wouldn't be able to be as racist as them and say the things and get away with it. So yeah, I think you're right. There definitely is something there where we can say that, the Conservative Party are very, very sneaky, very sly in the way that they use their politicians and the way they use their, politicians that are, brown or black. So yeah, definitely there's something
and
there.
With the Labour Party not having any sort of minorities, I think it's quite telling, because I think you've alluded to this already, but the Labour Party hasn't got that set up. And if you look at somebody like the MP for Coventry, I think is it Zara? I've forgotten her name.
Yeah, Zara Sultana.
Right. She's been the most outspoken person I've seen about everything happening in Israel and Palestine right now. And she's fully going against the whip. She's holding her position strong because she knows if she steps out of line, her constituents are going to vote her the fuck out. And what the Labour MPs aren't understanding is, in their relevant areas where they're not doing that, I can say this hand on heart, in Birmingham, for example, they're going to probably go independent because a lot of the minority community there are Muslim, and they're fucking fuming at how none of them have backed them or listened to the needs of their constituents. I understand that everybody in a government has to either abide or abstain, not fully go against it and rebel, because if you do that, it causes problems for your re-election campaign or finding a higher cabinet position. It's all playing politics, right? So you have to play things smartly. But there are some things that you look at yourself within and say, actually, nah, this isn't right. And if you do that, the streets will actually look after you more than any other amount of money will ever do, because people will have their respect for you and they remember shit like that. Like, I remember Zara now, and she's one of the very few. I didn't even know who she was prior to this, or that she was the MP for Coventry. But when you look at it and take a step back, you're like, this makes sense. And I can tell that you are morally quite pure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. The Labour Party on the Palestine issue have been very disappointing, right? I mean, worse than disappointing. Hardly any of them have really spoken out. Like you said, it's only a few, like Zara Sultana, and a few others who have actually come out and said, the moral thing. They haven't said anything extreme. They've just said the moral thing, which is, we need a ceasefire. We don't want any more people to die. So far, 20,000 people died in Palestine. I think 60,000 people injured. And when they say injured, it doesn't mean like, a small injury. These are like quite fatal injuries. They're
Yeah.
life-altering injuries. And for people to not stand up and say something about it when you're in a position of power is really quite shocking and disgraceful. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of MPs and people that haven't spoken up that I'm incredibly disappointed in. And those that have said the very basic moral things, I have gained a lot more respect for. One interesting thing that you said there is about those constituencies, right? And one person who also sort of broke the line and broke the ranks was Jess Phillips. And I think she's
Yes.
the MP of Birmingham Yardley constituency,
She's in
right? Which
Yardley.
is,
Yardley is like very, very depraved. It's
I
not a
think,
nice area, man. It is really run
yeah,
down. But Jess is one of those who's for the streets, because I'm from Berms, obviously. I know of her. She's got a very distinct Brummie accent. You know who she is from a mile away, right? If you're sitting in Parliament. And she was head of ethics, I think it was, for the Shadow Cabinet,
I think she was
something
the
like that.
women's, I think she was women's, she had a domestic violence brief, basically.
That's the one. That's the one. Domestic
Yeah.
violence. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really interesting with her because she's very much in line with the current leadership, right? And what you said is like, yeah, sometimes these MPs are noticing that they're going to lose their seats if they don't say anything. And I think it was interesting because I heard her on the radio one day and she was quite emotional, probably rightly emotional because, it's an emotional thing. But she then went against the Labour Party's official position. And I thought that's really interesting. Of course, I'm not saying that, there isn't a moral reason that she would have said it. But, I think there's also that thing where her constituency is probably, predominantly or has a big Muslim community within it. So for her not to say that would have been quite fatal electorally. But again, it's a shame that the world works like this. Why do we live in a world where those in power are so conscious of clinging on to power, right? That's the thing that they need to do. They need to cling on to power, cling on to their job, rather than think of what is the moral thing here? What is the thing that we need to speak about? What is the real issue when people are dying needlessly? So yeah.
But if you're in Labour at the moment and you're thinking you're obviously a prime minister and waiting, you don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm not agreeing with this. I'm just showing you why they're probably doing it. They don't want to say anything that's going to maybe tank their position in the polls, so much so that they can go on things and say Margaret Thatcher was a really good entrepreneur and she opened entrepreneurial activities. Now, you can say that and that can be true, but you know that picking up that person's name as a Labour, as a sitting Labour leader is like basically holding a hand grenade in your hand and letting go of the trigger. Why are you doing that? Because you're trying to appeal to a bigger base and you know that you've got your own people on lock. But as I've said, if you start loosening that a little bit, the places that you think are safe seats with minority seats are going to be like, well, fuck you, man. You haven't done anything for us or our people. Why would we ever look up to you ever again?
Exactly. But then, like, why is calling for a ceasefire where 20,000 people have died and, 50,000 people are injured fatally? Why is that going to ruffle feathers? That's so, that has to say something about where we are,
I
as
have a hot
a
take,
country.
which is I feel like it's because of anti-Semitism that happened with Corbyn in the past. They don't want to say anything that can ever be misconstrued as anti-Semitism. So naturally, the conversation around Israel Palestine has become so polarized that if you say call for a ceasefire or if you say what Israel is doing is wrong, that is straight up flipped on you and saying that's anti-Semitic. Now, you aren't saying anything anti-Semitic. You're simply speaking from a humanitarian point, which is if it was Russia or Ukraine, you can say what Russia is doing to Ukraine is wrong.
Yep.
It's not a similar example, but it is one country sort of oppressing another, and there are going to be backlashes and problems from that. The Labour Party is probably so concerned of having anything thrown at them that is anti-Semitic based, they don't want to say anything. And they're just saying, you know what, we'll just keep quiet. We don't have to say anything too stressful. They're going to fuck up anyway in the next election. Just sit and hold tight. And then all of us being, I don't know, centrists or centre left or hard left are hoping they change tactic when they get in office. But I'm not confident of it. I don't trust any of them anymore because stuff like this really shows your true colors. But you
Yeah.
understand there's a bigger political game, and that's power that you want to attain at the end of it. How you get it is probably not the biggest concern for you. You're thinking, if I get it,
Yeah.
I can do what I want with it. Not necessarily. People are hoping the Labour government's going to come in and open the wallet of public spending. Nah, I think it's going to be another round of austerity where they have to balance the books again, and it's going to be difficult and horrible, and all the things you want of a Labour government aren't going to happen.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised in X amount of years if you see it flip and go back to another Conservative government, because
Yeah.
they can say, well, these guys aren't doing anything different to what we did. Why are you sticking with them?
Yeah, but that can't be right, you know. That can't be right, that people will do anything for power, basically. You will concede your morals, you will concede your principles just to get into power, and then say, when we're in power, we'll do what we want with it. It just can't be right. And it just can't be right that we can't speak about the death of innocent civilians because, you know, people are worried, you know, about being called anti-Semitic. You know, that just can't be right as well, because, you know, it's like, you know, another thing it makes me think is like, whatever is happening in Israel and Palestine now is an absolutely abhorrent thing, but it's also a warning to any other minority group in the world. It's a warning to any other minority group in the world that the world will look on, they will watch, and they will let it happen if it is not, you know, if it does not make sense to them, if it does not make sense for them to intervene. Ukraine, Russia, maybe it makes sense for the UK, US, and NATO to intervene. So that's why they will back Ukraine. But what about if there's minorities in India? You know, what about if there's, you know, big minorities in the north of India, in Punjab, you know, there's the Sikh minorities? And what if Modi one day decides, you know what, I've had enough of you guys. I'm just going to go for you. I'm just going to fully go for you and do exactly what's happening in Israel and Palestine. You know, will the world look up then? I don't think so at all. This is a massive warning shot to all minorities that actually, if it is not convenient for the West or for the powers in the world to intervene, they will not intervene. Because why would Rishi Sunak want to intervene in India if anything's happening? Why would he? It doesn't make sense for him. India is a massive trade ally. The UK needs its deal with India, trade deals with India. So I'll let whatever happen, I'll turn a blind eye. Exactly the same way I'll turn a blind eye to what's happening in Palestine. Basically, it's telling me as well, which is a heartbreaking, that our lives are worthless in the eyes of these governments. Really, you know, if it doesn't make sense for them, our lives are completely worthless. It's like 20,000 dead, 60,000 injured. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. It's fine. We'll just go only until, you know, the big corporation. I think one of BP's tanks were blocked by Yemen. The Yemeni state blocked it. But when that happened, then all of a sudden it's like the Rishi Sunak's calling for a ceasefire. Then the next minute, Keir Starmer's calling for a ceasefire.
That was a fake news reel that went out. Basically, they said Rishi Sunak called for a ceasefire. The tweet that they quoted wasn't from a reputable organization. They said Sunak called for it. He didn't. He still hasn't. What happened was he was getting pressure from his cabinet to do that. Yeah. But I've seen that reel and it went wild. And I had friends of mine message me saying, look at this. Is this happening in the UK who aren't from the UK? And I said, no, it's not real. Like, they've said this bit happened. He's called for a ceasefire. He hasn't. He's been pressured by other people to call for it, but he still hasn't done it formally at this point. This is data recording 28th of December. This could be something that happens way after we have put this out, or something can happen very quickly. We don't know. But I take your point. Like, everything is all based around money, and it's based around what's most economically beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing. You didn't miss some disappointing news.
Sorry, man.
It was you, the bearer of bad news. I didn't realize that.
I got duped into it too, but then I looked into it and I thought, it's not real, and I can't respond to all of these hundreds of thousands of comments in this reel saying this isn't real. So I just thought, let it run. If people want to ask me, I'll tell them. But yeah.
Okay, so then that's very disappointing. So we still haven't called for a ceasefire. Then the UK government still haven't called for a ceasefire. So there you go. Then our lives are even more expendable to those in power. One, that they wouldn't call for a ceasefire when we would maybe dearly and desperately need it, and two, they wouldn't intervene unless it was economically beneficial to them or their country. And that's incredibly sad to see that. Obviously, it's incredibly sad that the current conflict is going on, full stop. But the wider implications are even worse for everyone else. And I think if the conflict itself doesn't evoke that empathy and sadness, then the wider implications surely should, especially for those people who come from different ethnic minorities across the world.
Agreed, agreed. I got one last thing to ask you about, Rab, which is show racism the red card. How did you get involved in that organization? And do you think racism is declining at all in football?
Oof, really big question. So I'll start with how to get involved. So Show Racism Red Card is a brilliant charity that's been going for, I think, up to 20 years. I might be wrong. It might be even longer than that. But it's been, fighting against racism within football, outside the game. The organization basically uses football as a vehicle to talk about racism, and it has educational programs across the country teaching sort of young kids and also adults about racism, the origins of racism, why racism shouldn't exist and why we should try and get rid of it. So it's an anti-racist education organization. I got involved with it because I've always sort of been a follower of their work, and I really, football is something that I'm very passionate about, and being an anti-racist is something I'm very passionate about as well. So it sort of merged both of them. And I saw the opportunity to become a non-executive director, which is basically another word is like a trustee or someone that's on the board of a charity. So I don't have any sort of a paid role. I'm a volunteer who sort of oversees the sort of general running of the organization, and I'm there to sort of be a soundboard, but also to provide sort of strategic direction for the organization. So yeah, I saw the opportunity, I applied for it, and I was, very fortunate to be taken up and be given the role because of my sort of experience in the charity sector, my communications experience, and so on. Do I think racism is declining in football? Is a really difficult question because I'm a massive Arsenal fan, and I try to go to as many games as I can. And sadly, on the home terraces, so at the Emirates, I've still heard racism, whether that's sort of racist chants, anti-Semitic chants against Jewish people. Spurs, our local neighbours, have a history, a Jewish history, or some sort of history that is aligned to that.
Daniel Levy as well is their chairman, and he's Jewish.
Yeah, exactly. And then over the years, there have been some sort of anti-Jewish chants that have come up around,
of course,
against Spurs. So that chant still continues, and that's quite disappointing. So I could say, I would say, racism doesn't exist in its same form across all of society. I think, when our grandparents would have come to this country, there was that overt racism in your face. You're not getting jobs. No blacks, no Irish, no dogs. You're not getting jobs. You can be racially abused on the street very frequently, racially abused at school, and that's how it is. Nowadays, I think, that sadly, we're going back a little bit when we were talking about Sunak and Rishi Sunak. They're trying to encourage that behavior a bit more. I think they're trying to bring that overt racism back in the way that they are being so blatantly racist. It feels like they're sort of fanning the flames of that racism and bringing it back again, which is really worrying and sad. But I think generally racism has changed, and I think within the game, it's an absolute disgrace to me that the other day, I think we had the first black referee in 15 years in the Premier League.
Yeah.
The first black referee in 15 years in the Premier League. What happened in the last 15 years? Were there no black referees, or just no black people in the UK? Like, absolutely disgraceful. Like, how can that be? Like, I was like, the amount of black players we have, you look at the English national team, Saka, Rashford, Bellingham now coming through. You've got like black players leading that team. Maybe not Rashford too much at the moment, but like Saka,
Cheers, mate.
Saka and Bellingham, definitely, right? And it's like, you've had black players in British football for so many years. We hardly have any black managers. We hardly have any black referees. I mean, the thing is, what annoyed me so much is it was said as if it was something to celebrate, the first black referee in 15 years. I thought, that's not a celebration. That's embarrassing. Then you've got Asian referees I saw recently as well. I think two Punjabi guys. And he's the son of,
guys. Yeah.
They were the son of another Singh, who was a referee before. So, I mean, great. But yeah, where's Asians? Where's South Asians in football as well? Do we exist in football? What do we have? We had Chopra at Newcastle for a bit. I think we've got Danda, Jan Danda, something like that, who was playing for
Jan
Liverpool at
Dander
one
for
point.
Bayern Munich.
Was in Munich, yeah. And so
I
we've
think it's
got
Bayern
like
Munich. Let me just check that. I don't want to get it wrong. You know me
I
and my
thought I
football
think it
stats
was
file.
Liverpool maybe, but we've had like players, one or two players, and then as a community maybe we celebrate them. But like, what's going on? Like, South Asians don't exist in football. You maybe exist in cricket. You got Monty Panazar there once, and then like, it's just
Oh yeah, so Jan Dander is yeah, you're right. He's at Ross County. He used to play for Liverpool. There's a kid who plays for Bayern Munich who's a singer as well, but I've forgotten his name. But he's in like their junior team.
yeah.
Hopefully he goes places in the future. But yeah, there's barely any of us. I won't lie. It's
But
very
that's
much like
exactly it.
okay, why?
Exactly, and that's exactly it, right? You just said hopefully he goes places, and we have to cling on. We collectively have to cling on to these 1-2 people. We hear their names, Jan Nanda. Why don't I know his name? Not that I don't want to know his name, right? But if you think about it, how many like random, white British players do we know of, or black players do we know of that didn't make it, or at Ross County, or at Liverpool for a while, and we're at Ross County. I don't support Liverpool, so we cling on to these 1 or 2 names. We really hope that they go somewhere in order to sort of push open the door for others. Like that was what was happening in other industries 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's like, of course, we're still having to push open barriers. So it's like, has racism declined in football? I don't know. I think football is still like an old boys club, an old white boys club in many ways, in terms of chairmen, in terms of referees, in terms of managers. I would love to be, I'm nowhere there, yeah, but wouldn't you love to be a football manager? Wouldn't you love to be a referee or something like that, or even a football player?
I think it'd be cool. I think being a football manager has more protection than being a referee. No one looks after you as a ref. You get all insults thrown at you. Imagine if if we're brown and we're doing something wrong, they're going to immediately call you a packy. Immediately.
Yeah,
That's the first thing that's going to come out of the fans' names or the fans' mouths. I'm sure M-words are going to be dropped for the black guy as well. It's going to all happen. It's just instead of it being a white referee, they're like, oh, prick, oh, F off, etc. Like, that's what it's going to be, more generic hatred, which is understandable. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand why they say it, because football is a passionate sport. But when it ventures into race, it's like, hang on, that's now allowed. So whenever there's a bad performance, say, I don't know, look at what happened in the penalty shootout. Rashford missed, Sancho missed, Saka missed. Immediate downpour of racism. We've got Andre Onana at the club. He's had monkey emojis put in his comments all the time whenever he makes a mistake. So, and I'm a Man U fan, and I see this, and I'm thinking that's my fan base. But all fan bases have them, so that's literally how it goes. I don't agree with it. It's just a lay of the land. So that probably might explain why there's a lack of referees that are coming through that are ethnically diverse. In terms of managers, there's not really been a black manager that's made it all the way to the top. The closest one is Nuno, but he's not. I think he's Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's Portuguese.
So he's Portuguese, but he's brown. So it's kind of one of those. You've got Patrick Vieira, who was at Crystal Palace, but then got pushed out. So there's no one really coming through that's thriving in that way. And great players don't make great managers. So it's conflicting, isn't it? There's no real avenue for them to go down afterwards. Doesn't seem to be fair. The last question I've got for you, though, is how much involvement does Show Racism the Red Card have with actual football organizations and implementation? And what's the separation between them and Kick It Out?
Yeah. So I think Kick It Out is much more involved in terms of like on the football side, right? And I think the involvement that Show Racism the Red Card has with football is very much through. So we had an educational, Arsenal have an educational hub, and we held an event there last year, and we'll be holding an event there this year. Similarly, Spurs, other football clubs all around the country, not just Premier League clubs, but all tiers of clubs, will sort of, be involved with those clubs in terms of holding educational sessions at the clubs. They might provide players. So, for example, some players that meant something to me, Rachel Yankee, who was like, the leading women's footballer for Arsenal Football Club for a lot of my youth, and Perry Groves, who's an Arsenal legend to an extent. were at the hub, right? So that's sort of the interaction we have with the clubs in terms of they will open up their facilities for us to hold educational events. They'll also provide players, and players will come and speak to the kids or adults who we're sort of holding anti-racist sessions for. Whereas Kick It Out, I think, are much more involved in sort of the terraces, in sort of, anti-racism within the game itself. So yeah, we definitely, both organizations provide sort of different roles. Like I said, sort of Show Racism Red Card uses football as a vehicle to sort of talk about anti-racism and push that. We've also got sort of a migrants campaign, a migration campaign coming up now, because that becomes such a big issue. Whereas Kick It Out is much more about in the game. How do we kick racism out of the game? How do we kick it out of the terraces? How do we ensure there's more diversity, more equality and equity across the game, basically? So yeah, different functions. I think, people definitely get confused with the two organizations. I think a lot of people end up thinking Show Racism Red can't do the much more internal stuff, whereas that's not really our role. But yeah, Kick It Out's another great organization and doing great work. I mean, there's a lot of work left, as we've discussed, to do to Kick It Out. Loads of work. So, I mean, we've got a big job on our hand.
I mean, the biggest one for me is, why doesn't racism get the same level of punishment as gambling? That's what really grinds my gears. I'm like, hang on.
Yeah.
Racist insult said player to player.
Yep.
5-match ban. Cool.
That's true.
Gambling, 9-month ban. What? So it's like, hang on. So match fixing. So basically, money is above words of how you say to people, or racist words. So money basically rules everything. That's what the crux of it comes down to. Okay, cool. That's really on. Like, come on, man.
Definitely.
So yeah. All right, sweet. Rav, actually, I've said one last question 3 times. How did you meet Gary Lineker?
Yeah, so that was Gary Lineker, great guy. He's definitely an ally. They all say sort of don't meet your heroes, or don't meet people that you look up to. And I wasn't sure if Gary Lineker was necessarily a hero of mine personally, but he's on Match of the Day, right? You see him see him
ever since you were kids, man.
Ever since we were kids, every Saturday, Sunday, Match of the Day, he's there. I mean, he's definitely part of the furniture of my household. So, he's a massive supporter of Show Racism Red Card, and he's been really outspoken over the last year, 2 years, especially when it comes to migration. I think from, seeing him on Twitter, willing to lose his job at one point.
He said, how he got temporarily taken off air, like, mate, the backlash, the BBC had to fully hold that. Like, sorry, man, you guys fucked it disgustingly. How none of the pundits wanted to come on at the end of the night. They're like, hang on. Gary Lineker stepped out. Ian Wright stepped out. They're like, okay, so you've lost the main presenter. You've lost Ian Wright, who's like a legend. Anyone that touches this is just going to be perceived to be racist now. So clearly they're not going to touch it. And they all made the right move. So fair play to them. Yeah,
so fully rating him for all of the stuff he's done, like around migration, around the government. So I went to meet him to do an interview for our new migration campaign. Asked him a few questions about why he's been so outspoken, what he thinks about that video will be coming out via Show Racism Red Card in the next few months. But yeah, I mean, the one thing about him, again, I would say is, like I said earlier, all people are just people, right? And he was a very humble person. He was very down to earth. He didn't, he didn't have any sort of bravado or anything like that. And I think that's a real sign of a good person, of a person that has, has something about them. Not just that he's been on TV all these years, but actually when you meet him, he doesn't act like he's someone special. He speaks how he speaks on Twitter, and I truly believe that he believes in everything he says. Nothing is false with him. So yeah, it was brilliant.
Top man. Rav, I've appreciated your time, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Let people know how they can find you and the work you're doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Indy. It's been great. A great discussion. You can find me on all socials at RavSRM. You can find JCWI, the organisation I work for. We'd love your support there as well on socials at JCWI_UK. Those are my shout outs.
Perfect. All right, people. Catch you next week. In a bit.